Three-time Grey Cup champion and current University of Alberta head coach Chris Morris believes the pervasive Marc Trestman offense is to blame for the decline in scoring league-wide. Is he on to something?
I think he exaggerated some of his analysis in saying that they're under the same coaching tree, because if you look at the offensive coordinators across the league, that's not necessarily true. But I believe there's a very large grain of truth to what he's saying, in the sense that that system has become pervasive even to people who aren't connected to Trestman necessarily. And there just isn't very much offensive variation across the CFL anymore. And defenses, and this has been talked about by multiple coaches and execs over the last couple of years, have gone to a zone system. They're willing to give you all the short stuff and make the mistakes to stop you from scoring. They're not giving you the big plays because they know that offensive system dictates that you take all that short stuff first. And that's a big reason why scoring is down. You see, a couple years ago when June Jones comes in with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, he's able to give a little bit more flavor to that offense and put Brandon Banks in a position to do some big things at receiver. And that, to me, is what we need more of in the CFL, is guys with a unique perspective, a unique offensive philosophy, willing to do things a little bit differently. It doesn't have to be massive, just a little bit differently to challenge these defenses, so they can't play the same defense against every team and have the same level of success.
I was talking to somebody in the league about this, and what I mean by this is Morris's comments, and they said, the CFL goes through ebbs and flows just like everything else, in cycles where the defenses get the best of the offenses for a few years and the offenses will come back around. But he felt like this point from Morris was spot on, that you look down in the NFL right now, especially Sean McVay and his coaching tree, and I'm sort of singling him out because he won the Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams, but his coaching tree, you mentioned him earlier, Hodge, even though he didn't really like the field in Winnipeg, but Matt LaFleur is in Green Bay. And then you have other guys spreading throughout the league. Kevin O'Connell, I believe it's in Minnesota from his staff as well. So you have this offensive innovation seemingly continually going on in the NFL, which has raised their points level. Now, there have been some rule tweaks as well, but you look at the recent head coaching hires in the CFL, or the guys that are head coaches right now, outside of really Paul Appolise and Kahari Jones. Well, I should say even Ryan Didwinny's in that boat, but it seems to me like the guys that are being more successful, Michael Shea and Orlando Steinauer, just to name a couple, because they've been in the last two Grey Cups, were either defensive minded or very much special teams. And they say that with O'Shea because of his special teams coordinating background. So I think we're just in a cycle right now where the offenses are down, but we certainly need some innovation. And the guys around the Ticats will tell you, when June Jones came in there was a new energy because of what he was putting in. And you mentioned it with Brandon Banks and his ability to have his first 1,000-yard receiving season. And it was a little over half a year at receiver there, and he really gets going. Masoli had his best seasons under June Jones in that offense. And Paul Appolise, smartly, we saw it in the latest episode of Behind the R, went back and looked at that tape from 2018, where Masoli threw for over 5,000 yards with Jones there, and wants to put some of the things that Masoli feels comfortable with in his offense. So I think we need a little more of that, where the egos get peeled back a little bit and you have it tailored to the quarterbacks and the players of actually what they like best. And certainly you would like to see some offensive innovation. Now, I think LaPolice did do that in Winnipeg, made a lot of window dressing, but they had sort of a core group of plays, whether it was in the passing game or the running game, that really worked well for the Bombers. But we need to see that continually each year for the scoring to go up.
I'm not a big X's and O's guy. I'll leave that stuff to you guys, but I will say this. You mentioned Sean McVay. The Rams have an offensive coordinator, an offensive assistant, a running backs coach, two offensive assistants, a running backs coach, a receivers coach, an O-line coach, and an assistant quarterbacks coach. And I do think something that has probably stunted the growth of a lot of CFL offenses is the fact that so many of these guys, and you listed off the offensive head coaches, Dunk, they're not only their own OCs, but they're their own quarterbacks coaches in many respects. And if you got that much on your plate, I don't know how much time you have to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do a deep dive on this team or this offense or this new innovation that's being done elsewhere to potentially bring that into the fold, even in the off season, right? Being a head coach is a lot of work. There's a lot of contact that needs to be made with different people, different players. You have to build your own staff. And so, if you're going to look at ways to innovate, I think you also need hands on deck. And that's something that the CFL's operations cap has really limited. It's made it very hard to have a robust coaching staff. And so, looking from the outside, again, as someone who's not terribly X's and O's affiliated, I think that's something that the CFL could look at as, hey, let's maybe have more than one person coaching on the offensive side of the ball. I know some of that's out of the CFL's hands because the teams at the end of the day hire and decide their own hierarchy, but the cap, I'm sure, has not made things easier in that respect.